Sophie Bennett had never imagined her life would feel so quiet. Years of raising her son, juggling double shifts, and locking away her emotions had left her accustomed to the heavy silence of her Vancouver apartment. It wasn't peaceful, it was the kind that follows a storm. When everything looks calm but feels hollow. So when Ethan surprised her with 2 plane tickets to the Maldives, Sophie didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or refuse out of habit. He had always been the thoughtful one, noticing details she thought were invisible. "Mom, you need this," he said, his smile gentle but firm, trying to lift the exhaustion from her shoulders. The moment they landed, Sophie felt the air wrap around her like a soft promise. Warmth she hadn't felt in years brushed her skin, and the ocean stretched endlessly, a surreal shade of blue that seemed almost unreal, like someone had painted it just to remind her that dreams weren't entirely lost. The resort rested over crystal clear water, sunlight scattering across the waves like sparks. Sophie felt lighter, as if she had stepped out of the heavy version of herself she carried home. Ethan chattered about the day ahead, swimming, tasting exotic food, walking along the shore, but Sophie's mind lingered on the colors, the sounds, the way the breeze seemed to speak to something inside her she had long forgotten. It was almost as if the island wanted her to remember she was still alive. The next morning, Sophie stood on the balcony, watching the sun rise with a glow so soft it made her stomach flutter. Ethan came out with a grin, holding 2 new swimsuits. "Mom, today we're playing a game," he said. She raised an eyebrow, torn between scolding him for spending money and laughing at his enthusiasm. "You haven't had fun in so long," he added softly. "Just try it, no rules. We just enjoy the day." Sophie hesitated. Arguments bubbled in her mind, but a quiet voice inside whispered that perhaps she did need to let go, even just a little. For years, she had done nothing for herself. Maybe this was her chance to feel human again, to reconnect with the part of her she had left behind. Her attention drifted to the pier below, where a man stood alone, tall, relaxed, as if the ocean spoke directly to him. His simple white shirt fluttered in the breeze, his expression calm, but carrying an unmistakable quiet sadness. Their eyes met for a brief instant, and Sophie felt something flutter within her chest, not attraction. At least not the obvious kind, but a sense of familiarity. A feeling that he somehow understood something about her without knowing anything at all. She quickly looked away, self-conscious and strangely aware of herself. On the beach, sunlight wrapped around her like a warm embrace. She wore the swimsuit Ethan insisted on, a simple, elegant design, modest yet different from her usual choices. Nervous at first, she let the sound of the waves calm her. Her feet sank into warm sand, and she realized she had forgotten how comforting small things could be. Ethan ran ahead, laughing with unrestrained joy. She smiled despite herself, feeling a rare spark of happiness. Then she heard a voice, calm, deep, and warm. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" She turned to find him, the man from the pier, standing closer now. "Julian Clark," he introduced himself, a travel photographer from Boston, taking a break to clear his mind after a difficult year. Sophie felt her heart soften, recognizing the weight of untold stories in his gaze. Their conversation was effortless, brief, and surprisingly intimate. No awkwardness, no expectation, just two strangers sharing the same quiet heaviness, connected by a sense of understanding neither had sought. Ethan called her, and she excused herself politely. Julian's smile lingered, quiet and genuine, leaving a small, unexpected warmth in its place. Sophie realized something she hadn't felt in years. Her story wasn't finished. Something new had arrived, delicate, subtle, and undeniably real, enough to make her heart notice its own rhythm again. And she didn't yet know that Julian Clark would soon become the reason her world began to open. Piece by piece, to joy, to possibility, to life itself. The afternoon sun draped the Maldives in a warm, golden glow that made everything feel soft, almost unreal. Sophie walked beside the water with Ethan, trying to stay composed despite the flutter in her chest. She wasn't used to vacations, to sunlight brushing her skin freely, or to wearing a swimsuit in public after so many years of hiding behind long sleeves and responsibilities. Yet, Ethan's excitement made it easier to pretend she was comfortable. Ethan darted ahead into the shallow water, his laughter carrying across the shore like a melody Sophie had forgotten existed. She let the waves rise around her ankles, the rhythm of the ocean a gentle reminder that life could feel simple, soothing, even joyful. Closing her eyes, she breathed deeply, letting the peace seep into parts of her she hadn't acknowledged in years. When she opened them, Julian Clark stood nearby, watching her with quiet attentiveness. He held his camera loosely by his side, the strap wrapped casually around his wrist. There was something in the way he observed the world, gentle, deliberate, unhurried, that made Sophie's shoulders relax. She tried to hide her surprise. "Oh, hello again," she murmured, a small laugh escaping her lips. Julian's eyes crinkled at the corners, a faint smile touching them. "Looks like you're enjoying the day," he said softly. Sophie nodded, admitting, "Trying. I'm a little out of practice." Their conversation was light but layered with subtle understanding. He spoke of the surreal beauty of the Maldives, his work capturing landscapes and untold stories, yet never boasting, never imposing. There was a softness to his words, a quiet depth that made Sophie feel unexpectedly safe, even though she had only met him twice. She noticed a trace of unspoken memories in his expression, the kind that made someone feel real without revealing all of themselves. Ethan splashed water toward them, breaking the silence. "Mom, come on." Sophie laughed and shook her head, amused by her son's boundless energy. Julian chuckled, a sound that was warm, steady, and reassuring. "He seems like a good kid," he said. "The best part of my life," Sophie replied instinctively. And Julian's subtle nod told her he understood the weight behind her words. Later, Julian mentioned a small gathering on the far end of the beach that evening, a peaceful affair with lights and soft music arranged by the resort. Sophie hesitated, instinctively wary of crowds and attention. Yet, Ethan's eyes sparkled with quiet insistence. "We should go, right?" he asked. Sophie felt the tug of her natural caution against the gentle encouragement from both her son and Julian's presence. She replied, "We'll see," keeping her voice even. Julian didn't press her. He simply nodded, acknowledging unspoken boundaries, yet his calm demeanor hinted at his understanding of her world, one carefully constructed from years of responsibility, restraint, and self-protection. Before walking away, he lifted his camera. "Do you mind?" Sophie blinked, uncertain. "Take a picture of the view behind me," she quickly clarified, stepping aside and feeling the familiar twinge of embarrassment. Julian laughed softly, the sound unassuming and kind. He captured the moment, the golden sun reflecting on the water, Ethan's tiny figure dancing in the waves, and Sophie's tentative smile, and returned the camera strap to his wrist. "Thank you," she said softly. Julian's reply was understated yet genuine. "It's easy. You make it easy." Sophie walked back along the sand, a quiet unease nestled somewhere between her chest and stomach. She told herself she was just a tired mother on vacation, not someone who needed to consider the kindness of strangers. Yet, she couldn't ignore the small spark Julian's presence had ignited, the faint warmth that reminded her she wasn't as closed off as she had believed. Even as she watched Ethan play, Sophie felt a subtle shift in herself. The day's calm, the soft sunlight, and Julian's unassuming kindness combined into something she hadn't felt in years, the freedom to exist without expectation, to allow herself a quiet moment of connection without consequence. And as the sun lowered, painting the sky in amber hues, she sensed that something or someone was slowly beginning to change her world. As evening descended, the Maldives transformed into a softer, more intimate world. The golden light faded into a gentle twilight, and Sophie Bennett walked alongside Ethan, their footprints leaving temporary marks in the sand. Her heart still fluttered from earlier encounters with Julian Clark, the quiet man who seemed to notice things no one else did. She wasn't used to this feeling, visible, yet safe. Feeling a connection without pressure or expectation. The small gathering at the far end of the beach was just as Julian had described, lanterns glowing softly, music drifting like a whisper over the waves. Sophie felt a familiar tension in her chest. Crowds made her uneasy, but Ethan tugged her hand, eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Mom, come on," he urged. Sophie hesitated, but then she let herself follow, allowing the warmth of the evening to envelop her. Julian was already there, leaning casually against a wooden railing, camera slung over his shoulder. When he saw Sophie and Ethan, his expression softened, and he offered a small, welcoming smile. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice steady and warm. Sophie returned the smile, noticing how natural it felt to exist in his presence. She realized she had been holding her breath for years, guarding herself against the world. Tonight, she didn't have to. Ethan ran off to join other children, leaving Sophie and Julian standing quietly together. The waves lapped gently at the shore, punctuating their silence with soft rhythm. They talked about little things, the quality of the evening light, the smell of the sea, the gentle sway of the palm trees, but every word carried an unspoken understanding. Sophie felt the years of isolation, responsibility, and restraint slowly loosen around her. She could feel the tiny spark Julian had ignited growing into something warm and persistent. At one point, Julian offered to show her some photographs he had taken earlier in the day. The images captured more than landscapes. They held the subtle magic of moments unnoticed by most. Sophie found herself lingering over one photo in particular, a candid shot of Ethan laughing in the shallow waves, sunlight glinting off the water. She felt a flicker of joy she hadn't acknowledged in years, a sense that life could still surprise her. The night deepened, lanterns casting long shadows across the sand. Sophie noticed the gentle way Julian looked at her, with a curiosity that was respectful but unmistakably present. Her pulse quickened, not in fear, not in obligation, but in a quiet awakening she hadn't expected. She realized that this vacation, this chance to breathe, and this unexpected connection were opening her to feelings she had buried long ago. As the last hints of sunset faded into night, Sophie and Julian walked to the water's edge together. Their hands hovered near each other on the surface of the waves, not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating from proximity alone. It was a simple, silent moment, full of unspoken truths. Sophie felt a tender awareness of herself, a recognition that she could feel again without shame or hesitation. Ethan's laughter carried to them once more, breaking the spell gently. Sophie turned to see him dancing in the sand, entirely in his own joy, and she smiled, feeling gratitude for the day, the sea, and the man beside her who had reminded her what it meant to feel alive. Julian's eyes met hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, no promises, no pressure. Just understanding. As they walked back along the shore, Sophie took a deep breath, letting the night air fill her lungs. For the first time in many years, she felt a delicate hope, gentle and steady, like moonlight reflecting on calm water. She understood, finally, that it wasn't the game Ethan had suggested or the vacation itself that had changed everything. It was the simple act of allowing herself to live again, to feel, to be present, and the quiet presence of someone who reminded her she wasn't alone. Sophie knew her story wasn't finished. Something new had begun, small, tentative, but undeniably real. And as she watched Julian disappear for a moment to adjust his camera, she felt a thrilling awareness. Her life could change, slowly, subtly, beautifully, and she was ready to let it.